more you can recognize and get familiar with the world beyond the body, the more you will be prepared for when you do that again in a more final way. Dreams prepare us for death, and dreams give us direct and firsthand experience of what it may be like, so that we can not only prepare ourselves for that moment, but live our life accordingly to that.
In this episode of Messages from the Deep, a podcast for dreams, Michaela and I explore another dreamer's dream, one that dives into the collective experience and is actually more literal than symbolic. Although it may paint itself to be a complete fantasy world, one rich with symbols, there is actually a reoccurring and vital core theme to this dream that reflects in the journey of life and death, particularly the transition from life to death. What lies in between, the experiences people have had and shared, the patterns across communities, cultures, and religions that help us understand what to expect and how dreams play a role in death. Death is something we face every day, not quite so much on the surface, but in very symbolic ways and in very real ways as well. But this is a very fun episode, a very fun dream that I'm excited to share with you. And we'd love to hear if you relate to any of these experiences, if you have any stories yourself around death to share, personal experiences, dreams, anything at all, please send it in. We'd love to feature your stories next time as we discuss other dreams. And you can submit your dream as well at sharekirti.com/submityourdream. I've included something very exciting this time that was just so effortless for this episode, because there's so many wonderful things that we went through. So I didn't want you to miss out on any themes or topics that you might be interested in. So there are detailed timestamps in the description. You can skim that and check out what connects, what pertains to you, what you want to hear more about. Let me know what you think. Every day we have a transition from conscious to unconscious state, to a state of being to non-being. So death is a daily occurrence in some form, in the transition of our lives, in the transition from life into death. If you have any questions for us, please send us an email or a DM. You'll find our socials and emails and websites and references always in the description. Of course, we're very passionate about the subject, and it's always exciting for us to hear, learn, and discuss. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. The title of this dream is Sudden Extinction. I am living on a tiny planet like the Little Prince, content in my little life in my little cabin, looking out into space. Instead of a rose to water, I have an orange cat that I care for. It is evening, however often that comes, and I am brushing my teeth while the cat watches. I step outside to take in the night air when I notice an asteroid hurtling directly towards me. I have about 5 seconds to ponder this before it hits. The cat and I look at each other, and he meows and rubs against my leg. I keep brushing until the asteroid hits us and we are completely obliterated. The fire is so fast and so hot that it appears like a cartoon of ever-expanding circles of light that change from one color to the next in sequence. What I feel is effervescence. All of the molecules in my mouth, my cheeks, my spit, the toothpaste foam and toothbrush, all effervescence. and separate away from each other into cosmic sea foam and disappear. Then everything goes completely black and silent and still for a few minutes, since I don't exist. After that, I find myself entering a blue-teal nautilus tunnel, while little grunting troll goblins run past me in armor. I avoid them and keep walking through this endless spiral tunnel until I notice a tiny invisible crack in the curved walls and find a way to slip through into another dimension. And that's when I wake up.
I love this dream. I love everything about this dream. So what was the feeling upon waking from this dream?
The annihilation by the asteroid actually felt amazing, or at least there was no pain. It was more tingly, mixed with detached, curious observation. It felt peaceful. I was a little scared of the tunnel, and the goblin soldiers grunting were scary. Like if they found me, I'd be in purgatory with them forever. I thought I'd be trapped in this beautiful but endless spiral forever. And then finding the impossible crack into another universe felt like freedom and reincarnation.
Was there an intention before sleep that the dreamer made?
There was not.
Okay. So, future chat. Could any part of this dream happen in the dreamer's future?
I definitely wouldn't mind or be afraid of instant sudden death. So maybe being at peace with that future moment.
What is the background context of this dream?
There weren't any other people, so this was more getting in touch with my mythological fantasy world. We're living on a tiny planet like the Little Prince is possible. It's more about trusting the core of my being, regardless of what is going on outside.
Perfect. What about any symbols and associations?
I'm definitely a lot more afraid of pain than death or non-being. This felt like a chance to observe the moment when you cease to exist without any of the gruesome or painful elements that usually come from having a body. The moment of collision with the asteroid was almost psychedelic. It kind of looked like the animated disco marble maze number count in Sesame Street from 1 through 12.
Great. What does the dreamer want to know about this dream?
I'd like to know more about what the Moebius strip tunnel that I went into represents, and who were those little green trolls? They were kind of mindless, and where was I headed when I woke up?
Perfect. So, Sher, do you want to start us off, or should I?
Yeah, I'll start.
Great.
With so him starting off with living on a tiny planet like Little Prince. I think of Little Prince as a children's book, and it represents innocence, wonder, pure, like childlike perspective on the world. And the fact that the planet is small, it feels, for me, we live in a world where we feel very small compared to the planet. Things feel vast, it feels overwhelming. But if the planet's smaller and the focus is his own little world, it feels very safe, comfortable, controllable. And the story also represents the imagination and the ability to see beyond the surface to the deeper meanings in life. So it feels like a very comforting perspective. Overall, the vibe I'm getting is like he's created this sweet little home. He has this orange cat that's like his guardian, and they're content in their little life, as he says. And with death coming and just accepting it, like, okay, it's happening. It just feels, yeah, it feels at ease. He doesn't speak into fear or there's any anxiety or any worries. It's just like, I'm content with my life and death is coming, and that's that. I'm just going through that experience. I was curious about the orange cat. I did want to ask him if he has or ever had an orange cat. And I know orange cats are particularly feisty and very friendly. So it feels like a fun guardian archetype. And now that we're reading it again, another thought that's crossing my mind is the way he describes the psychedelic journey and the fact that he has this little partner in crime. It kind of reminds me of Finn and Jake in Adventure Time.
I
And
watched that, yeah.
yeah, it has feeling, and they are partners in crime going through space and having all these psychedelic journeys. So that's what it makes me think of.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah. And since death is welcomed and it feels like ecstasy, because he also mentioned that the annihilation actually felt amazing. I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
Annihilation by the asteroid actually felt amazing. I love that he said that. Because also death is described as it can be an ecstatic experience. It can feel like bliss if you're leaving and transcending your body. And then when he describes opening up that portal, immediately I think of what the Tibetan Buddhists say about death and the rainbow light body. It's like activating those chakras. And he talks about how each ring is a different color. So imagine it's like this awakening of the light body to be able to travel in the transition of death into the next life. And with this part, I mean, that's like what I know and have heard with rainbow light body, but it actually reminds me of a lot of psychedelic experiences described, especially with the DMT portal that people go through. And so that was something I actually reached out and asked him about. So I was like, have you done psychedelics? Because this dream definitely, it's like, it feels like you had to have experienced it to some degree. Or maybe you just had a lot of meditation experience and you've just opened up that world naturally. That's possible too. But he says he had experimented with it, but it's been a long time. Like he said 5-10 years ago, he had stopped or stopped for 5 to 10 years and then experimented again. He says he has done psychedelics, but not DMT. But the research I've done with DMT, and this is the part I find really curious, is the way he described his death experience is perfectly mimics, I know, the one experience I had and a lot of people's experience with DMT, where you're being blasted through this rainbow tunnel before you enter black space. And this is the key part. People always mention that they run into trickster or jokester archetypes, that there's always like elves or goblins of some. And I remember that too. I saw a joker figure when I was in that space. And so I looked into it, and Terence McKenna most famously named them machine elves because he used to experiment in that space a lot. And so it's just really weird that every single person who's like had some kind of experimentation or has gone into that like rainbow portal has seen these little like elf goblin like creatures. So the fact that he dreamed that is just perfectly mirrored everything I've heard with that experience. So it feels like he accessed it just naturally through his dream realm.
There you go. One reason, yeah, he doesn't even need to take the DMT. He can go just straight to it.
Yeah. And yeah, his sounds even better.
Totally. Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
if this were my dream, so I guess that's a good place to start. It's always hard to know where to start when you have a lot to say. So that's a good place to start because that's what he said he wanted to know. He wanted to know about the Moebius strip tunnel and the green trolls. I love what you said. It seems like then like this is more than just a personal association, but more of like a collective experience of a place or experience that exists objectively, you know, outside of just an individual imagination. I think it's always interesting to note like when people have the same kinds of experiences of the same places, you know, no matter what era or time or place they're living in, or if they ever meet or not. Like those collective archetypal things, it kind of just makes the argument for places, energies, beings that exist beyond just making something up or somebody's, you know, imagination or subjective experience. They like exist objectively, you know, whether it's in or outside the like collective psyche. I'm not sure, but I love that. I love like taking note of like objective places in the imaginal realm, you know. Just because something is in the imaginal realm doesn't mean it's imaginary. The color blue and the spiral is also a frequent experience at the International Association for the Study of Dreams last year. Robert Wagner was giving a talk about like common lucid dreaming things that like people tend to experience. That are the same, like we're talking about. And the last thing that he put up was just the color blue. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. So, and this is interesting too, because he said that the tunnel, what did he say? Yeah, okay, it's a blue tunnel with trolls. So I once had a dream after my grandmother died, and in the dream I became lucid, and so I knew that she was dead, and I said, "Why are you in my dream?" And after I said that, she like the whole scene changed. It was intimidating at first, like kind of a scary dream, and then it totally changed. The vibe like turned from like negative to positive really fast. And she's like, I'll show you about the conditions on the other side. And when she said that, and she's like, in life, the mind is like this. And when she said this, her face, like from her nose to her forehead, changed into this square of like blue swirling colors. And then she said, but on the other side, the mind is like this. And when she said that, the box that was just here became the background to where she was standing. So it's like, you know, so take of it what you will, but like the blue swirling colors for me, I had that dream like 10 years ago, has like really long represented a portal to the other side of life. So for him in this dream, that like his portal from like life to death was also this like blue swirling tunnel. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that one. Like that's a thing, you know? And it's like a testament to a lot of this dream, I think, being more literal than symbolic. I think I broke it up into two, like the symbolic aspects of the dream versus the literal aspects of the dream. But my first intuition was like, oh, this is like a simulated experience of a very literal way one could experience death. Yeah. And then for the goblins, I was like, or the troll goblins. I was like, I've never seen the troll goblins, but I was like, to me, they sound like guardians, because at any threshold there are guardians and gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. So to me, like if I'm going through a threshold, it would make sense that I would find like the guardians and the gatekeepers of that threshold, especially because they're wearing like armor, which is another sign of like, you know, so guarding something, guarding doorways, guarding whatever, you know? So that's what I said about that. And yeah, I would like to get out of the transition as soon as possible. Also, that's actually like in practices or philosophies, or, you know, the combination of the two religions that talk about death a lot. It's kind of a common theme that you kind of want to like get through the portal, like get to the other side. Like it's like commonly understood that there is like a transition that you want to move towards. And I talked about that later when I was talking about the literal aspects of this dream. But I thought I would start with like breaking down the dream symbolically, because it's such a clean dream, you know, it's such a like clean, clear narrative that it was like being like, okay, we can like totally cleanly like go through symbolically and then tie in the literal components. Because like most dreams, this can be like, it's both symbolic and literal, but it'll depend on, you know, the dreamer.
I like that you said you wanted to break those things apart, but you immediately said this feels very literal. And I noticed too that when I was going through it, I reminded myself, well, like metaphorically would mean this, but I naturally also felt it was a very real experience, because what you're saying with it being clean, like metaphorically, it's so easy to take apart. There's just so much to work with. But because it is such a common collective experience, like you've related to it, I've related to it. And I also mentioned that I had a dream once in the notes that I made where an asteroid or Jupiter had fallen apart in the sky and a big chunk was coming at Earth. And I remember thinking, I have like 20 seconds, it's gonna collide. And I remember the moment of impact being obliterated and also being in this no space as well. It's like this feels so relatable on so many levels that I'm like, this is another realm he's accessing. It's not just symbols that we're breaking down.
Totally. So do you wanna I can start with just my symbolic rundown, and then we can get into more like deeper layers of the dream.
Yeah, I would love to hear.
Okay, cool. So like symbolically, I think the dream could represent, well, obviously like big life changes, either either that are like potentially coming in the future, or as a reflection on something that's happened in the past. So either way, so if this were my dream, I'm living alone in a cabin. So like in the moment, I'm in this peaceful environment, kind of secluded, but it's like tranquil and simple and nice. And I have this cat, which is, like friendship. And also it makes sense that it's a cat in the dream, because cats, especially in like ancient Egypt, are associated with death and the transition between life and death and the underworld, and like going through that journey. So it makes sense that it's a cat. Usually in those stories, it's usually a black cat, but I think a red cat will do just fine. But yeah, cat's symbol for the afterlife, for sure. It's funny that I'm looking out into space, so I'm like already looking in the direction of what's coming, as in like maybe if I don't intellectually know what's coming, maybe I can feel it, or I have an instinct or intuition towards it.
I love that. Yeah.
So, and I'm brushing my teeth. So just doing something like mundane, but like I'm taking care of myself. So like I'm like super chilling. I live very peacefully. I take care of myself, and I have like good instincts for like to see what's coming. And then all of a sudden there's like this unexpected interruption in my life and an unavoidable change. And then like the feeling, like maybe because I already have a good intuition and instinct for what's coming, I don't have fear of this, like whatever's coming, a big change, a big interruption in my life, like a big transformation. More so, I have like all I feel is like surrender. Like it's almost like, sure, why not, which I love. I love how he like just like I love the details in the dream when you just picture them. Like I love the detail of watching an asteroid like coming straight at me and just continuing to brush my teeth. Like looking down at the cat, but then being like, like just continuing like my most mundane activity, like not even putting the toothbrush down. Like I'm just gonna keep doing it. It's all good. So then like asteroid hits, this is, like this symbolic breakdown is just like so straightforward. Transformation, breaking apart of the self, whatever that is, if that's material things like home or relationships or body parts, I don't know, but like also beliefs and belief systems, understanding, knowledge, etc., to be like born anew. So then there's like a dark silence, a period of introspection and coming in after like to go back out. And that moment was interesting too, and I'll tie that back in later when we talk about the literal aspects of this dream. But it's funny he said that like there's this, so the like asteroid hits, and then there's this there's the breaking, there's the fire and the lights and the rainbow tunnel, like you said, and the like obliteration of self. and then there's this moment of like nothingness, and where he didn't exist, which is interesting. It reminded me of the period between waking and sleeping, when like before we enter into a dream, there's like we're awake and then there's nothingness. We almost like cease to exist, and then all of a sudden we come out into this other dimension, and we're having an experience again.
Whoa.
And like that's the whole, to me, like that's, I mean, there's a lot to say about that. It in
Just
terms
that
of this,
sorry, just that imagery is really beautiful to think about. That transition into sleep is very similar.
yeah, right. And there's like, in my perspective, belief, understanding, like a real shaman is somebody who can keep their remain conscious throughout that dark period, throughout that like non-existent time when you're skipping from one dimension to another, whether that be between life and death or waking and sleeping. So if you can do that, then you can directly carry your waking intentions straight into the multidimensional universe, and perform actions for healing. So if like someone comes to the shaman and they're like, I need find a part of my soul that's missing when this trauma happened, because I'm having all of these symptoms of mental, physical illness. He's like, okay, let me do that, and can go into a state that is just as deep as sleep and dreaming, but without that period of darkness where we completely lose all of our memory of our life and just wake up in another dimension willy-nilly and like play out whatever's happening with no question, like totally sure, whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like lucid dreaming, but it is lucid dreaming, but instead of like having to fall asleep, then be in a dream, then realize you're dreaming because of this, and then you become lucid, you just stay. You just stay with your waking consciousness throughout the entire transition. Let your body fall asleep. It also reminds me of a different part of this dream that I'll get into in a second also, but let's keep going with the symbolic content. The spiral aspect of the tunnel, for me stands for life force, a continuous journey with no beginning and no end. The blue spiral, like I said before, is like the portal to the other side, at least in my personal simulacra. This is the portal to the other side, the blue spiral. We already talked about the trolls, and then the crack and the slip through another dimension. If it were my dream, I would say a new dimension after death. So both figuratively, if we're taking this dream symbolically, meaning like life change, I would say that I could know from this dream or find comfort from this dream in seeing that even if I can't see what comes out of this life transition, I know I made it there. Like the hardest part about transitions in life is like what he said, which is like getting stuck in the transition. Like say you're like moving or changing careers or breaking up or, getting divorced. It's like the transition is what is the fear, the transition is what's hard. And like, that's where all the like fear of the future comes up, because it's like, oh, what if I stay in the transition? What if I never find the right place to live? What if I never find the right job I want? What if I never find a new partner after this? It's like not being able to see the other side is what like causes a lot of fear. But like if this were my dream and I'm taking it symbolically, I would say like no matter what's coming at me, or what comes at me in general in life, like, and even if I can't see materially or intellectually what's on the other side, I can like know that I'll make it there. And then
I wanted to interject because this was the only metaphorical note I made was right at this part, the crack. And it was just slightly different from what you're saying, because you're having a positive take on it. And of course you felt comfort to go through the crack, like, oh, I found a way out. My first question when I thought of that is actually, is that crack representing actually a distraction from his propelling journey forward? Is there a crack representing that there's a like maybe the comfort is actually what's holding him back from propelling even further. So that was my perspective on what that could have meant.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting take for sure. It could. I mean, those are the questions of like that, you know, as much as we can interpret a dream, there's like only some things that only the dreamer can know or have access to, you know? I feel like that's one of those things. That was my symbolic breakdown before moving into the literal content. Yeah.
Great.
Cool. All right.
The favorite part actually that you pointed out was the mental processing of what is to come versus just feeling and being in it. I think that's a really important thing that you said, because I think that's something most of us do. At least people who are warriors or like to plan ahead or think, or it's like it's happening anyways. But it seems like the way he dealt with it was like he was like, all right, let me just continue with what I'm doing. But even the act of him witnessing it is also what you're saying, like seeing versus just fully present, experience it as it happens.
Yeah, full surrender. I love this full surrender. It's inspiring.
It really is. Yeah, if it was me in that dream, I would be scared and not chill.
Yeah, that's one thing I said is like I've heard dreams. I've heard this dream a couple times before in different iterations, and everybody in there, anytime I've heard this dream, the person in the dream is like terrified. Yeah. So good job, dreamer.
I'm impressed. I'm like, you seem like a chill, present dude.
Totally.
Did you want to continue with the literal or?
Yeah, sure. I said for the literal side of this dream, which I think it's far more literal than symbolic, although we can take it, you know, speak about it both ways. For me, that this is a dream that's giving me direct and firsthand experience of what it's like to leave the body behind forever, for good, to die, basically. So dreams prepare us for death, and dreams give us direct and firsthand experience of what it may be like, so that we can not only prepare ourselves for that moment, but live our life accordingly to that, you know? The first thing I wrote is about like near-death experiences. It reminds me of firsthand accounts of near-death experiences that I've listened to before. Have you ever like listened to people's NDE experiences?
Yeah, a little bit. And of course, one of my favorite shows, The OA, is all about near-death experience. Okay. I've mentioned that to you before. I was like, you got to watch that. But that entire show is about near-death experiences. So I'm curious, but I would love to hear what examples you have.
Okay, so the one that came up first was this woman. This woman gets in a kayaking. Yeah, she's kayaking and like accidentally just goes like full bore over this like horrible waterfall and gets lodged in the bottom of the waterfall. And she was underwater for 30 minutes and came back to life. But she said that like so in this dream he's being like obliterated, and he's like everything was like coming apart, and it didn't even feel like it wasn't even nuda. I felt no pain, but it almost felt good, you know, is what he said. And in this woman's recounting of her experience before she like passed out, she said she could feel every bone in her body breaking from the water, but she was like, it was one of the best feelings I've ever had. Like I've never felt better. Like it wasn't actually like it felt good.
That's crazy.
So I was like, that's pretty amazing. So like, right. So like, as we were saying, like dreams can simulate and prepare us for literal death, as we see when we compare dream experiences to near-death experiences, which are the two closest experiences you can get to death without actually dying, right? So it's the best we got to work with. And then in her experience, she also goes to another world and like is in this, I forget kind of how she described it, but like kind of like a basic ethereal world, and she meets beings. They weren't trolls, but they were like beings, kind of in humanish form, and they have a long conversation, and then they send her back. And she's like miraculously, her friends like somehow like get her out of where they're going, and miraculously they're in the middle of nowhere in like South America, and they like climb up the mountain that they're on, and like there was an ambulance sitting on the road just in the middle of nowhere, like where they walked up from the river. There's also I think an even more well-known near-death experience of a woman who might have been, no, I forget what, she might have been a neuroscientist, or I think she was some kind of scientist. Don't quote me on that, but she has a stroke, and she's like in the left part of her brain, and she becomes like, and she's like alone in her house, and she's trying to like call the ambulance and like get help, but the left side of her brain is turning off, so she only is functioning through the right side of her brain. So like she can't see numbers anymore, and like when they pick up the phone, it's like wah 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 wah. Like she can't hear language. Like all of the left-sided functions of her brain are turning off, and she's having like a totally right-brained experience and like tripping out. And she again had like a near-death experience of like being like blasted apart and becoming so big and expansive. And she was like, I couldn't comprehend how I could ever fit my energy back into like the constrictions of my body. Like that seemed insane to me, that I could ever fit myself into a body, which was really interesting. So those are the two like main near-death experiences that I have in my memory bank that this dream reminded me of.
Also, popular near-death experiences, which led to a book all about it, was the color blue, and how so many people have seen a specific color blue that they can't describe or find when they come back to life.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, like trying to discover that, like, what is that blue color? And, people, of course, imagine that it's like the color of heaven, and it just doesn't exist here.
Yeah. See, the color blue. Another just like check. This is like the quintessential experience. So
sorry, one more thing about blue is blue beings, which is something a lot of people speak of either alien blue beings, but it's also known that Hindu deities they're always depicted as blue because they believe they were like blue. I guess that's how people perceived them then, was they were blue, and people often see their guides or aliens coming in as blue.
Yeah, there you go. Very interesting. Good call. I have a little blue statue over there. I want to go. I'm not going to grab it, but
what is the statue?
It's just a little Krishna statue. Yeah.
Elf.
Not a troll. Not an armored troll. On to my next point about the literal content of the dream, and just dreams in general. Like, one of the main functions of dreams is to prepare us for literal death. And because, I mean, it makes perfect sense when you think about it. Dreams are experiences we have when our consciousness is not looking through or living through the lens of our physical body. They're experiences outside of the realm of the physical body, and if, death is the same thing. It's your experience when you leave the physical body, and then the only real difference is that when we sleep, we come back, and when we die, we don't, at least to the same body, at least in my book. I mean, it seems pretty, yeah. And so it makes sense that we could, dreaming is the best way to prepare for death. I mean, also prepare not even just for death, but also for life. I mean, one reason I have the same kind of vibe as the dreamer, because I also have the exact same perspective where like I'm not afraid of being dead or dying. I just would really love to like not be in a significant amount of pain for a long time before that. But I like this dream because he was like, there was no pain, like even if what you would think like, ooh, that looks like it would hurt. It was like, no. But one way I've come to this conclusion and like feel really secure about it is through dreams and through remembering my dreams. I'm like, I go away from my body every night. And, the more you can recognize and get familiar with the world beyond the body, the more you will be prepared for when you do that again in a more final way. In Tibetan Buddhism, they say that they believe in the Bardo world, so the underworld, basically, that we traverse through after death. And there's a myriad of reasons for doing that. I would think, in my understanding, it's specifically to be able to let go of anything we're trying to take with us into death. Our things, our ego, the people we love, etc. And so like the experiences of releasing attachments, and they can be in like anywhere from like neutral experiences to pretty hellish experiences, like the Bardo realms in the underworld. But anyways, there is one loophole to that, which is apparently at the moment of death, there is according to Tibetan Buddhism, there is a moment where there's a bright white light. And if you can recognize the light for what it is and go make it into that space, and it's like kind of goes like that, then you'll be able to skip the Bardos entirely and actually transcend in that moment and never have to reincarnate again. So like you can become enlightened if you can catch that moment and be like, I know what that is. I remember what that is. I'm going in there. You can like totally skip the transition process. Again, like you said, my one fear is getting stuck in the transition. You don't want to stay in the transition. You don't want to stay in the Bardo realm, and you don't want to, you want to go through it, that experience. And God, I have so much to say. Anyways, I'll try to stay focused.
This is a great topic that I think people would be very interested in going deep with. So
okay, good. Yeah, it's like this instant light, and so the way one would train themselves to recognize the white light is not only through meditation, but also through being aware of the process of falling asleep. That's how you basically train yourself for this moment where you can like attain enlightenment at one moment before dying. And so like this dream speaks to that for me, where it's like the more you are prepared to recognize what the dream, or prepared to recognize the difference between being in the body and being out not in the body, the quicker you're going to be able to get through the transition period, and like the less hellish it's going to be, or like the safer it's going to be. Because like in a dream, and I like studied this in lucid dream. I was like once in a lucid dream, I was like, let me try to study the dream to see if there's any way that you could tell through your sense perception, feeling, seeing, hearing, the difference between a dream and not a dream, your waking life. And you can't. There's no, it's a perfect, no matter if the waking life's a replica of the dream, or the dream's a replica of the waking life, that's up for debate. But they're the same. Everything's the same. It feels the same. Like when I'm saying like when I'm in my dream body, it feels the same. And everything looks the same. Like it's just as real. It's just as realistic as any waking experience. So if you aren't training yourself to be able to recognize based on other clues, like things being out of place, or seeing things that don't make sense, or seeing deceased relatives, like, which is all kind of like lucid triggers, like basically training yourself for lucid dreaming. If you're not training yourself to be able to recognize in other ways what is a dream and what's not a dream, then it's going to be really, it's not going to be, this isn't like an absolute, it's not a threat. It could be a lot harder to do that, or a lot easier to do that when we die.
Yeah.
So if like we're already prepared to be like, oh, I'm in my dream body, my thoughts instantly manifest, I'm definitely creating this reality, I better not get caught up in it, I better know I can ask for help, I better know that like like this is my dream, you know, then we can get through those transitions and like move forward to the next step, instead of taking a long time figuring out that we're dead.
And
That's how it is in my imagination.
like that you can about it, like what you said, like I can ask for help. I've noticed like the more confidence you gain, or what you said, experience you gain in the dream world, there's that moment for me, because I haven't practiced lucid dreaming as much intentionally, but I have noticed a strengthening in my dream world where I feel more confident with confident and empowered with what I can actually do, or that I can change this right now, or I'm being attacked, I have a knife in my hand, you know, moments like that where we actually, like, it's almost like a sudden, I am in control of this.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because it's like without a body, like our thoughts, like in the dreaming, and especially when we're like the deeper we are in a dream, our thoughts will instantly manifest. So, you know, which is like pretty, you know, like in the dense material world, everybody's like, your thoughts manifest your reality. And like, yeah, but they take a long time. If you have one thought, one negative thought, it doesn't instantly manifest in front of your eyes as like your house burning down. But in the dreaming, in the dreaming and in those like dimensions, it can. And like it's like when I think about being stuck in the transition, or like within that space where like, if like we're carrying with us through death, or we're carrying with us into the dream world a ton of fear and a ton of attachments, that's like the hell experience in my imagination, because we're going to carry our fears and attachments with us into a realm where they are just going to instantly manifest in front of our eyes as real experiences that we don't know we're dreaming, and it's going to do that until we figure it out. And that could take a really long time.
That experience, because that is, yes, that just when as you're speaking, so I've done ayahuasca 3 times now, and that's not very much for people who have done it, but every single time, and everyone has such a different experience, but I'm a very mental person, and you know, the second you have fearful, anxious thoughts, it does just like expand upon itself. And every single time I have had those hellish experiences, and I remember it was just one fearful thought, but because it's such a sensitive space you're in, and you're like under the influence of psychedelic drugs on your brain, like you're in it, there's no backing out at that point, there's no waking up from it, you just have to go through it. And I remember just having that single thought, it was just like, yeah, I was in hell for hours. For sure.
Yeah, right? It's terrifying. It's like a terrifying thing. So yeah, best to really, it's really, I think, wise to work on, you know, fear and attachments while we're alive, you know. You know, and then this reminds me also of well, we talked already about like shamanic practices. One main function of a shaman in traditional cultures is to play psychopomp for those passing through to the other side and to go with them. So they're like, okay, you're dying, I can access that realm at will, you're going to go there, I'm going to come with you. And since I go there at will throughout my life for various reasons, to collect souls, for healing, for just to understand the map, etc., I'll go with you. I'm familiar with the terrain, and I'll tell you where to go. to get through the transition to the next step, right?
Proper shaman, like in a ceremony setting, would be able to go in and intervene and be like, okay, I can see you're struggling. Let me redirect you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're lucky. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, wouldn't that be nice to have someone have like your homeboy come with you through the dying process? Wouldn't that make it so much easier or so much more, less fearful? There are still people in certain traditions. I think, what was it? Shoot, I forget the specific tradition, but I think this has been a tradition in various cultures throughout the world, and it's still practiced in, I think it was like Vietnam or Thailand. It was one of those like Southeastern Asian countries, and they still to this day have women whose job it is to come to your deathbed and recite to you the map of the underworld while you're dying, so you know where to go. So you don't just wake up in this dream and be like, start manifesting your fears and attachments and have no idea what's going on and like have to figure it out for yourself without knowing you can ask for help, without knowing you have people there who can like assist you, without knowing like not to go here and to go there. So they have in their culture basically their map of the Bardo or the transition where everybody goes, and they know to tell you, like take a right, I mean, I don't know what the instructions sound like, but in my imagination, it's like it's reading a map. Someone's reading a map to you.
I think it's a recite. I know in some like Tibetan cultures, it's a recitation of a prayer that's supposed to help guide.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And there's a thing called death doulas now, which seems to be slowly growing in the Western world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. And it's like, I don't know. I haven't looked into what they do. I would assume it's kind of like helping people like be calm and comfortable and not afraid and stuff. And it's just like, I just love the idea of like, well, having someone recite a map to me of like, this is where you're gonna go is just like so cool. And then, but even better, if you had someone you love and trusted and was like, oh no, I can come with you and like help you through to the transition, and then you'll be like in good hands and you won't need me anymore and it'd be totally fine. Like, oh, so nice.
And for resource, because I grew up with Chinese Vietnamese culture, and at funerals we would buy fake money. You could get it at a lot of Asian markets. We'd buy like stacks of fake money and burn it so that they would have resources with them in the underworld.
Exactly. A lot of traditions do that. They'll bury you. I mean, like, look at ancient Egypt. Jesus Christ, look at how much they got buried with. Like, was it just so they could lay there dead with the things? It's like, no, it's because they're taking them with them and trading them in their next journey.
Yeah.
Native American tradition does that. I know for, like you get buried with copper and coins and like, well, I don't know if that's specifically Native American, but yeah, it is a, there's like a Johnny Depp, like one of Johnny Depp's earliest movies is like, is like, he's dead, but he doesn't know it. And he's in the and like his guide is like this, he like is like this older Native American dude, and he keeps on asking him for tobacco, and Johnny Depp's like, no, I don't smoke, and he's like, oh, you don't know what like, it's not for smoking, it's because we need some stuff to get through. We need some like offerings, we need some money, we need some barter,
That's funny.
And it just goes to show, like, through culture, NDEs, cultural examples, historical examples, what we're just talking about is like, it's like something we don't talk about or like think is like all like hearsay or imagination in Western society or in modern Western society, but like it has been the understanding through our entire human experience up until like 100 years ago that like this is what happens when you die and everybody knows it. And now we're like, well, actually, like nothing could happen, or like, and it's like, yeah, you could postulate on any infinite potentials of like after death, but like we've also known pretty much like what happens forever for like our entire existence, and now we're just gonna like run in a question of into like infinite spiral, because you can do that about anything, but you can also like there also is like we can kind of know also, or like have some understanding.
In traditional cultures, you know, it's like you're conditioned and your world solidifies like this is the way it is. And then suddenly we live in a world where we have access to all religions and cultures in some ways. And we also have science, which is all about proof. And that's the most like realist, concrete thing to the modern world is like, is there proof? There is some, but
yeah, I mean, I think you know, like doing like something that can be done over and over again in a laboratory has its like uses for, you know, but it's not useful for everything. And for a lot of things, you know, like I'm like, I don't care. That's boring to me. I mean, like the fact that like so many people's near-death experiences are the same is like, is that not the same, doing something over and over again and getting the same result? Just because it wasn't in your controlled like walled little area doesn't mean it's not completely like proof, thousands and thousands, you know, documented proof of like the similar thing happening over and over again. But you know,
that's a really good point. I mean, that is in a way its own control, like that many similar experiences. That's almost to the point of undeniability.
right, exactly. And we're adding to it with this dream. And we can, and that's the thing about dreams too, is like you don't have to believe any of these things. Go have your own direct experience. You know, you can have that. I once had it reminded me, I once had a dream, like kind of like a simulated NDE, but not like this. This was like far more elaborate. Mine was like just almost just a moment. And it was like the like sensed experience was that I was like very in slow motion leaning over a step. And then the like my like the omniscient experience was that this was my last step before death. And so this was like the last moment of my life, and I had to like be like it, and then the dream is kind of like, what are you gonna do now? And it was like this totally slow motion experience. And in my dream I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pray to the dead for help. I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. And it's like interesting because it's like, how else would you know that experience? How else would you able to simulate that experience in any sort of realistic way where you really have to, you know, like know what you would do? You know, you can't. You either have to have an NDE, which I would probably like to avoid if I had the opportunity, or you can have the dream, like the safe NDE.
Yeah.
Everyone has the right to their own opinions, but for me, in my opinion, dreams are our direct assurance that we exist beyond the body, and we will continue to do so.
Also, I thought you were going to mention it earlier because you were touching on Tibetan Buddhism. They, of course, talk so much about the death transition, preparing for death, all of the things, Bardo. And they also preach sleep yoga. That is also one of their practices and teachings. So kind of mirrors what you're saying, that this is another practice, another preparation. Dreams.
Totally. Exactly. How dreams prepare us for death. I also wrote that like dreams not only prepare us for literal death, but again, going all the way back to the beginning, they can prepare us for figurative deaths as well. And all of the things in this dream that could be applied literally can also be applied figuratively too. And I would use this dream like that. To me, this dream had like so much energy to it. When I first read it, I was like, ooh, I was getting like excited and stoked. And I was like, oh, this dream's coming with a lot of energy. It means I can like take it with me and carry it with me throughout my life, and you know, refer back to it when I need it, when I feel like I'm dying, whether that be in like a small moment or a bigger moment in any transition, or just whenever I want. And apply this dream of total surrender, you know, like we can surrender at the moment of death for sure, but we can also surrender throughout life. Obviously he's doing a very good job of that already.
Yeah, the way he
we
described.
applaud this dreamer for his total surrender and no fear, zero fucks lifestyle. I was just going to make a kind of a side tangent note about how dreams will prepare us for death, but they can also, if we're lucky, they can also spare us death also, or put it off for a little
Yes.
longer.
Yes, like recently the dream that really captured my attention when I was rereading the Dreams book by Jung was when he warned one of his friends that he should take a guide with him on his mountaineering trip, because the way his dream sounded, Jung was like, I think you're going to die on your next climbing trip, and basically warned him. And the guy was like, you're just being silly. And he died 3 months
Oh
later.
my God.
Like and the fight, this is what the thing is. In the dream, he describes stepping off. He wanted to keep climbing, and he stepped off, missed a step, and was floating in ecstasy. That was how the dream ended. So his interpretation of that was like, I think, because he knew that the guy also does physically go mountaineering. So I guess that's the conclusion he jumped to immediately, and then it ended up being true. So
wow. I mean, see, add it to the list. Again, it's the same thing where it's like I died, and in that moment I was floating in ecstasy.
Is it avoidable? Like, that's the thing. Even though, of course, he tried to warn him, but would he have listened? Wasn't it just his fate at that point?
This is the question. I was thinking about that literally this morning while I was doing something really mundane. I was like, do we even have the choice of, like, I don't know, the topic was like somebody I know is trying to get sober. I was like, do we even have the choice? Like, does anyways, another topic for another day of like like of fate and free versus free will, etc. But yeah, I have one of the craziest dream stories I've ever heard firsthand was a woman who she's super young and in her 20s. They told her doctors told her that she had to have a heart transplant. And so she spent like this horrible year in like a waking Bardo, where it's like you're on a list for a transplant, but you don't know if you're going to get it. And then they make you, they kind of, I don't know how you could force someone to do this, but they kind of make you join a support group of other people who are also on life-saving transplant lists. And then like you have to meet. And so then like you spend a year in this group meetup with people, and it's supposed to be like therapy, but like you're basically meeting up with a group, and like nobody knows who's going to live or die. Isn't that bizarre? Like, isn't that so freaky and like so?
But that's like almost a microcosm of what we are experiencing in the day to day.
That's very true. That's very true.
Of course, it's more pressing because it's like a closer reality for all of them.
Yeah, time sensitive. Yeah, more time sensitive. But yeah, anyways, that's a little tip. But I was like, oh my God, I can't, like, I've never even imagined that as like a setup. Like, that's like a movie. This whole thing is like a movie or something. Anyway, it's better than a movie, actually. You can't make this shit up. So she
foundation for a movie script. Like, I would love to know the conversations that would go down.
That's seriously. So she they tell her she has a heart, then they tell her she doesn't, never mind. Then finally they're like, okay, we got someone for you. A night or two before the transplant, she has a dream that she's bleeding out on the surgery table. And she's like gonna die. She's like about to die. And she goes and like, since she's like just witnessing it, she can like access, information beyond her common knowledge. And she basically goes to the doctor, the surgeon, and tells him what he needs to do to save her life, which is like this just like random kind of like rogue intervention that's not really like common in this situation. So then she goes and gets the surgery, and the exact thing happens. They like something about her arteries were like too small or too thin, and she started bleeding out and dying on the surgery table. And suddenly the surgeon gets this rogue idea to do some uncommon intervention, and they try it out as like a last resort, and they save her life.
Wait, so she tells him in the dream?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she travels to the future and saves her own life in a dream.
That's wild. Or, wow. See, that's also the chicken and egg thing too, though. It's like, because it's like, oh, she told him in the dream, then he gets the idea. It's happening all at once as well. It's like the epiphany. It's like when you get the idea, you're like, where's the idea coming from? Am I the inception of the idea, or is it coming to me? Is she seeing that he's getting that idea and she's acting as a part of that? Or does she actually give him that idea?
Right. In the dream, she goes and was like, I need to, like, he doesn't know what to do. I need to go tell him.
Wow.
Yeah, and not only that, when she was in the real moment where she was bleeding out, in that, like, so she had the dream, and she was witnessing the dream and was able to guide and direct the surgeon to save her life. Then when it was actually happening, she was having a different experience, and she was having a sort of NDE experience where she was like in the hospital, and this was like the last moments of her life, and like God, she said her version of like God and the devil were both there, and she was having this like really archetypal experience of like negotiating her life contracts.
Wow.
And like seeing like what, and like having a conversation about like her life and if it's time yet, and oh well, this is a contract, oh well, let's change the like, etc.
And with her heart being the focus, like the epicenter of this play, it also mirrors that belief that you weigh your heart in the afterlife. And that's when you're like negotiating. That's what made me think
Totally. Absolutely. So dreams can prepare us for death in many ways, whether that's embracing death or putting it off for a little while longer.
I mean, that's just a big deal to explore that, to navigate that. And then at the same time, I just feel like it just happens. It just comes to you. Like, she didn't plan for that experience, but it happened. Did she explore her dreams before? Do you know like her history before all of that?
Not really. I think it was fairly common. Like, yeah, I have some dreams, and this is, but it's not like, oh yeah, I've been a huge lucid dreamer and I have all these special psychic abilities. No, she's just a normal woman.
Yeah, I think it kind of feeds into each other though, having that conscious dream experience and then the waking experience. It's like they're, like we said earlier, they're strengthening one another.
Yeah.
They're helping each other out. They're playing together.
Totally.
I did want to redirect back to his final question. What do I want to know? And if there's anything else we can touch on that, or if you had anything else on that. Because he mentions he wants to know about the Moebius strip tunnel. I guess we did kind of go into that, like what you said the spiral represents. And he called it a Moebius strip, which is kind of like what we were speaking into just now. It's like there is no beginning or end. And what were those trolls? With that, I'm just so curious about the trolls, because that is something that has really gripped me before, with people bringing up these little trickster figures that they would see in these realms in the tunnel. And as I dove into it a little bit before, I think of what the trickster archetype represents. Like the Fool card in the tarot is the first card in the major arcana, and it's 0. And it's all about, there's a guy with a knapsack and he's on his journey. He's beginning a new journey and he's about to step off a cliff. That's what it looks like. And that's what it feels like to leap into the unknown. The fact that the trickster holds this unknown, they're really dancing in between. There's 0. There's no like physical identity. They don't get categorized in, I think, ideals of like right or wrong. I feel that the reason why the trickster figure is in this realm of like non-being is because they're the one archetype that's not confined by anything. They're not confined by any ways of being or ideas. They laugh at pain, or they make jokes out of terrifying situations, like, as we know, the beloved Joker character in all the Batman series, he's trying to question people's beliefs and ideologies. So he's able to traverse realms almost because of this perspective, of this take.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense that they're like the ones you would run into in the in-between.
Yeah, and I like that you said they're like guardians too, and they're wearing armors in this. He saw them as that, the guardians.
Totally. Well, I mean, like what you were just saying, it makes sense that they're the guardians of the in-between in both this literal sense of in-between worlds, but also in a figurative sense in between like emotions, in between like pain and bliss, or fear and laughter, and like they're in the in-between, so they can turn one into the other.
Yeah, that's their realm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it makes sense. He says like he wants to know what it represents. I mean, to me, it doesn't represent anything. It is something. It's like, what does my table represent? I mean, it's not. It's a table. To me, the strip is it's a literal existent thing that we pass through as a tunnel that functions. No matter what it is, like its function is what it is. It's a tunnel. It's a transition from one place to another. And then, yeah, again, the little green trolls.
He says they're mindless too, which is also pulls out that like logic, structural thinking.
Totally.
If it was metaphorical, like say a dream, I don't know. Like if we were to see it that way, I guess that a trickster figure would encourage maybe that. How can you be more playful or not take things so seriously?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think those are like, and then he says, where was I headed when I woke up? I think that is very much only information that's accessible to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I could, at least I don't think I can answer that question with any confidence. It's not my dream.
I wonder if he has a cat, or has a cat coming into his future.
Yeah, seriously.
They really are guardians. So. But I like Absolutely. That you also represent friendship too. It's just that connection.
Yeah, I love this dream. It was really fun to read. It like gave me energy, stoked me out when I was reading it. And yeah, I think it's just to wrap, wrap everything up. I would say if it were my dream, this dream is far more literal than symbolic. And I would take it as one of these gifts of the dreaming to give us simulated experiences that prepare us for death, and that can be taken just as literally as any other experience. And then the dreamer can do with that as he may.
That's beautiful. And yeah, it's a great reference, I would say. It would be a story that I would carry with me for a while to reference in many ways.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it's one of those like I doubt, dreams, big dreams, you forget, they don't come up, they don't come up for a while, but like they're also, this is like one of those things for me that I would never forget. Even if like there goes years or two where I don't think about it, it's not like an experience that I would probably ever forget.
Mm-hmm. Especially the death dreams, those really stick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We actually stopped the episode here, but I started telling Michaela a story I was really excited to share with her about the topic of death and how prevalent that's been in my life, including how strong it's been showing up lately. So I begin with telling her about an essay I wrote when I was 9. And the prompt for the assignment was, what is your fear? What is your greatest fear? And I wrote about it on death. Here's the story.
We had an assignment. We had to write about our fears. And when everyone started sharing, because there was a time where we would share, and everyone was like, oh, I'm afraid of spiders, I'm afraid of the dark. And I wrote this whole essay about how I was afraid of death because it was waiting for me at every corner.
Oh my god.
And so me realizing that I wrote something way too serious to share with the class, as I was listening to everyone share out, the teacher was like, would you like to go next? And I was like, no. Okay. But because of that and the theme, she called my mom in and she was like, is everything okay?
Oh my god. That is so funny. I love that.
Fine. I was like, but death is scary.
I know. I mean, you're just like, it's true.
I know. It's like, what? But anyways, death has been coming up more like strong lately. And I walked by one of those free library posts.
Uh-huh.
Where you just open up and people leave books in there.
Yeah.
And I found this magazine called Tarka. So it's published by Embodied Philosophy, but this is a series they're starting, and it's called Tarka, and Tarka means perfected reasoning. And this whole volume is on death.
Oh, wow.
And that's all I saw. When I walked by it, I saw this on the edge, and I was like, yeah, I need this. And the entire thing is people on the editing team and submissions as well of people's essays on their experiences with death.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Super cool. Yeah. So I love that.
That's so synchronistic.
Yeah. So
when did you find that?
Literally like a week ago.
Wow. Have you read any of them?
I read one section by a woman who was talking about being with her partner as he was dying on the bed. So they were talking about a few people. Oh, look. Oh my gosh. I just flipped open this.
Oh my god.
It's crazy. So there's people who talk about like their religion or their experience, and then they'll go into like, according to, my practice, this is what we believe in death.
Sure.
And philosophical essays, but then there's people talking about their experiences with losing people and grief.
Okay. Yeah.
So the whole entire thing is about death. It's super cool.
Wow, that's such a good score.
Yeah. It's by a company called embodiedphilosophy.com. A publication. That's what the publication is called.
Cool.
And this is volume 4 of this series. Yeah.
It's a magazine? That's like a really nice magazine. That's really beautiful.
Some fun images in there, like some artwork and things. But I know it's super cool. Like whoever these people are, like I want to work for you. Anyways, super cool. If I find anything interesting in there, I'll send it to you.
Awesome. Please do.